Hi there and welcome once again to the channel. One of the headlines in yesterday's pro-Brexit Telegraph brought tears to my eyes. Now, don't be cynical. I'll tell you that there were salted tears rolling uncontrollably down my chubby cheeks. Now, we are used to the BS coming from the general articles in the Sun or the Mirror, and of course my favourite, yours and mine, the Express. But after the Telegraph's ace reporter on finance and economics spoke out yesterday, well, we should all simply stand and bow our heads and say to the great and powerful sage, Matthew Lynn, "Forgive them, Matthew, for the EU know not what they do." Or alternatively, you could do as I did, read the article and save the price of a night's out entertainment at your local comedy club. So let's get to it. Well, yes, folks, it's all good news today, according to Matthew Lynn of the Telegraph. And true to his long and illustrious history, again, this guy doesn't appear to let facts get in the way of a good story. Never mind his delight just a few weeks ago in a video we did earlier in standing on the graves of innocent people. I nonetheless thought it would be better to read carefully what he said and do what we do. You see, what we do is we check, we analyze, we research, and do all that other boring stuff before we speak. So we will start with this fact, which is not what Matthew Lynn does. He's just like a kind of a cheap Saturday night good time girl, and he prostitutes himself to pander to the wishes of his readers. Now, either his knowledge of the real economic situation is naive, or he's just a complete and utter charlatan. But I'll leave that for you to decide. But his latest story goes a little like this. Yet again, the Eurozone struggles to keep up with the rest of the world. Now, before we get to rubbish this one, I thought we should pay particular attention to the headline. He used the word Eurozone, and it's deliberate because he seldom uses it, you know, unless he wants to whack the currency, as he normally uses the term the EU or the unelected bureaucrats in Brussels and blah, 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 blah. So just to put that Eurozone thing to bed once and for all, unfortunately, sterling has dropped in value against the euro by 20% since January the 1st, 2016. And if we were to just move that back 1 month to December the 1st, 2019, the figure would be 25%. However, we'll move on from that and we'll examine exactly what he said. And I'm quoting, "America's economy has already recovered the ground lost during the pandemic and is powering forward. China produces now more than she did before the first outbreak of COVID-19. Even a relatively mediocre economy, such as the UK, for example, with one of the worst outbreaks of the virus and facing all the headwinds from leaving the EU, is staging one of the most rapid recoveries in our history. The global economy is bouncing back strongly, but there is one exception. The Eurozone, that's the weakest link in the global economy, according to him, and it could be years before it claws back to 2019 levels of production and of output." Well, that's pretty strong stuff. So now let's take a look at it. So that opening line about America, to be fair, he did tell the truth about America. It is powering back. However, that's where it stops. Everything else he lied about. Everything else. So let's take a look at China. In this report you're about to listen to, which was published before China started wholesale lockdowns again, as it did over the last 10 days, you can clearly hear the warnings, particularly on the purchasing index.
There were fresh worries Monday over just how fragile a global recovery could be. That on signs that Asian exporters have hit a rough patch. China's factory activity growth slowed sharply in July. The closely watched Purchasing Managers Index from Caixin Market sank to 50.3. That was its lowest level in 15 months and perilously close to going below the 50-point mark, which would signify contracting activity. There were similar drops in other Asian exporters, including Vietnam, Malaysia and Indonesia. Among the negatives were signs of fresh disruption due to resurgent health worries.
Now, this purchasing index is the best barometer. It's the best gauge to measure economic activity, especially in China, because the purchasing gauge, it doesn't rely on Chinese government stats, and I can assure you they can never be relied on. So his claim of the left-wing China recovery, which I think is quite funny because China's would be left-wing, is his first lie. Now let's look at his second lie. Oops, sorry. I mean his second assertion that the UK is leading the way. Now, I'm not knocking the UK, and I wish with all my heart what he said was true. But it ain't. You can see this on the table. You can see clearly the figures from 10 countries, and I assure you I picked them randomly from around the world, including some from Europe. And by the way, being Irish, as you can hear by my accent, I left Ireland's figures out of it. If I was to put Ireland's figures in, the UK would be down even further, okay? Because Ireland actually showed a small growth last year, despite the pandemic. But the point is that nobody in their right mind would believe these figures, because the facts speak for themselves. But you can see clearly his assertion that post-Brexit UK is forging ahead is also tainted with rubbish. And may I add here as a point of sadness, that referring to 130,000 deaths that occurred because of this government's incompetence as outbreaks is astonishingly disingenuous to his readers and heartbreakingly cruel to those families just ripped apart by the tragic deaths of loved ones over the last 18 months. I mean, where did he get off? Call a spade, man, here, you know? Now we look at the rapid recovery statement. So again, I refer to the experts. This graph shows sales based on previous months. As you can see clearly, when the baseline is so low, having record sales recovery is not that difficult, especially if you open up the economy despite the obvious risks of basically, let's face it, playing Russian roulette with people's lives. Now, what remains to be seen here is how many more lives are at risk in the pursuit of this government's numptious approach. Matthew Lynn being able to make such scandalously misleading claims unopposed is wrong. He's making claims of what might happen, and he's simply hoping that the death rate stop climbing to the levels we saw in mid-March, or God forbid even earlier. We're now at the same, as you can see, we're now at the same levels in mid-March. I mean, we're talking about 50,000 deaths here. But back to Mr. Lynn and his spurious remarks. He then gets into his full stride and writes about this country and that country and why the EU will always play catch up and. But then you learn that his article is based entirely on projections. And for Matthew, if you're actually listening, I doubt it, but if you're actually listening, the real experts whose jobs depend on accuracy, okay, they're not opinion, the accuracy of their findings project that the UK's economy will shrink only by 4% based on the 2019 figures, if everything keeps on the up and up. But that is by no means guaranteed. So get your facts right, Matthew. You're talking rubbish. This bloke and his newspaper seem to revel in some sort of personal or financial gain by keeping us, the public, in perpetual conflict with either the EU or indeed ourselves. Now, they achieved this by deliberately wanging on about subjects about the economy, face masks, vaccinations, as if these challenges are not extremely complex and to which they have a simple solution. But do they ever publish those solutions? Do they? Hell, no way. As I've said before, they simply pander to the readers that their advertised wishes to target, and they don't give a tuppence halfpenny about the facts. They don't give a tuppence halfpenny about the damage they cause when they peddle this muck. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining me, and please feel free to make a comment. I do enjoy them, and I'll see you on the flip side. Take care.